I'm sure we have different perspectives on the same band.
I have questions.
And I have no answer. David, that was the problem. I said, you know, it's like when I talk about, there was Crocus and there was David, and the two were different. You know, and like I was like Crocus. I got along with Crocus fantastic. You know, he was funny, witty. We laughed a lot.
Oh yeah, me too.
You know, and then there was David, and I was like,
I've experienced both for many years. I was just with David in New York called Ruby performing for their shows in
right?
And you know, we had one. I mean, the Crocus, it's all David now to me, but I mean,
Right, it's all David, right?
David, when just being David, enjoying life, great.
I think he's one of the funniest people. I mean, he's just a joy to be around. You know, and I always wanted to look at him and go, just be you. You. Don't, you know, you don't have to do this shit with me. I've known you too long.
That's the way I feel too, but it doesn't matter. Do it anyway.
I just thought it was funny that when we went over a few years back, we were on vacation. We were in London for like 3-4 days. I got a hold of him. I go, hey, we're going to be in London for like 3-4 days. You know, and he's like, well, okay, won't you come down here? I'm like, I put in the first 3,000 miles, and I don't know anything about it. He's like, I'll take the train up here. I'll meet you up here somewhere. We'll have lunch. He's like, nah, I don't go anywhere anymore.
How long ago was it?
Jim Crook, you know, the guitarist in Mirrors, who comes up in between sets and he goes, see that guy over there? I said, yeah. He says, he's a cop, and he says if I don't turn down, he's going to shoot me. And I said, well, you going to turn down? He goes, no. And we didn't turn down, and he didn't shoot him. And we spent about a month there, and that was our longest period of time playing gigs when I was in the band. I had joined in 1971, but a year after that I got drafted, so I spent 2 years in the Army, didn't come back until early 1974. And picked up with Mirrors again, played through that year, and then towards the end of the year it went Rocket from the Tombs, and Mirrors did the first extermination night. I think it was in December of '74. Jamie came up to me and he said, look, you know, because Mirrors was on the bill also. He came up to me and he says, I don't want you playing with Rocket tonight, I want you to play with us. I said, all right. That's what I said I would do. I did. So, did you ever hear that Extermination Night CD of Rocket from the Tombs? There's no bass guitar because I was sitting in the audience. In fact, you can hear me on the recording. Hold up the mic a little bit closer. There we go. So, should I start over? No, I won't.
For those people in the balcony, they can't.
Yeah. So
in the back.
You would think I would know how to speak into a mic by now, wouldn't you? No, I don't. See,
I'm still listening to you.
bass player. Where was I? Oh yeah, I was about to get kicked out of Mirrors. So that extermination night, I didn't play with Rocket from the Tombs. I only played with Mirrors. About a month later, the same lineup was going again there, and I was by then out of Mirrors, and I didn't play with them. I think Jim Jones had taken my place again in that band, and about a month or so later, I got fired. And then I went off with Rocket, and off we went.
Real quick, we have to talk about Peter Lofner. You know, we were talking a lot about partying and drinking and drugging all that time, and Peter, unfortunately, I mean, he died at what, 27? Because
24.
Of his 24.
24.
So
He drank himself to death at 24.
Yeah, horrible. So what was,
24.
Which is the saddest thing, because that
Very
means
sad.
He was
he had
so
probably more
talented.
talent than just about anybody I've ever known.
Absolutely.
And was just brilliant. But it just, demons are demons.
yeah, and that's why I wanted to touch on, because everyone you talk to says he was the most talented guy, and he was, you know, so what was your experience with him?
I've known Peter, I've known of Peter for many years, because back in high school, I graduated from Lakewood. I'm another Lakewood High School grad, by the way. And I remember Peter from his band Mr. Charlie over in Rocky River, which is a very popular band in my high school days. And as after I got out of high school and I joined Mirrors, Peter became one of Mirrors' greatest supporters. I mean, I swear that every show Mirrors ever did in the time I was in the band, Peter and Charlotte, one of them was at least in the audience. So he was a person who, he was very enthusiastic. He told everybody in a town where people told you, you can't do this, you can't do that, you're from Cleveland, who the hell do you think you are? That wasn't him. He says, yes, we can do this. Yes, let's go out and do this. Screw them. Who cares? And he brought people together. He rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. But I think that was because they just weren't used to people getting in their face and saying, don't tell me I can't do something. Help me do it. That's what he did with MMS. That's why we got on the radio.
And he wrote for with Lester Bangs was his hero.
Lester Bangs and him were very, very close, very good friends.
And that's what, and he was the same kind of personality, right? In his face kind of thing.
Yes, they were. Yes, they were, very much so.
There's a whole other, you have to read it in this book. I mean, it was fascinating.
And Peter also was an excellent writer, also, writing articles for Cream magazine. There was a magazine here in town called Exit.
Right.
Both he and I wrote for that magazine for about a year or so, but I mean, just incredible stuff. This guy was so talented, so he could pick up a guitar and hear a song once, and he could play it for you.
Well, I think that was the reason that Peter and I got along so well, was because I was of the same mindset. It was like, I hated that people in this town always just always denigrate living in Cleveland, or denigrate, having to be here. You know what? Pardon my French, but fuck you. If you don't like it here, get the hell out of here. That's what I'm saying. Because I love Cleveland, and I was like nothing but possibilities here. And every time somebody told me, the same as we get Peter, you can't do that, it just made me go, you know what? Kiss my ass. I'm going to do it then. I don't care. And I never understand, and especially for musicians and writers and anybody else creative in this town that lets themselves be beat down by people telling them they can't do something. Just tell them to kiss your ass and go off and do it. All right?
Absolutely.
That's the way it should be. It's just crazy.
But Charlie, you just said it all. You have nothing to fear but fear itself.
That was a tough
and my
time.
wife.
Yeah. But Cleveland, that was a tough time, and it was, dirty and gritty and all that. It's a different Cleveland.
But that was the beauty of it. It was a blank.
That's
It was
right.
a blank canvas.
Yeah.
This whole city belonged to us. This whole city was ours because at night it would just shut down.
Right.
The streets would be deserted, and you could drive around. You could go anywhere. I was just driving around. I'm here staying with my dear friend from Lakewood, Jim, and his wife Deb here. They're here tonight, and everybody should probably knows Jim O'Brien. He's one of the great newspaper publishers here in this town, and he's a great asset to this city. And we were driving around last night, like down the flats, like we used to when we were kids and stuff. Everything has changed. Everything is blocked off. Everything, you can't go here, you can't go there. Don't turn here, don't go there. We have a beautiful downtown area. Oh, let's screw it up and screw the roads up and everything. So, they never did it. But back in those days, this town was just shut down, and you could go out and you could run this town everywhere you want, from the east side to the west side. Anywhere, down on the south side, everywhere. The only place you couldn't go is in the lake.
And it's like, Jimmy Lay said, the Cleveland attitude. Everybody, the best people are from Cleveland, and we all, kind of rallied together. Everybody supported the musicians. And
the musicians supported each other back. I mean, it's like if you weren't playing back in the 70s, you were out supporting somebody else. Peter was a huge supporter of just about anybody that he could find that he thought had any work. He would be out there and he would champion them. And it's like, now people, it's like, if you're not playing well, you stay home. I mean, go out and support all the other acts that are out there that are playing tonight. And get out and, do something for somebody else. And that's the way it used to be. I mean, you walk into a gig, and you knew half the people there because they were all musicians that were playing tonight. It was great.
Do you have a question?
No, you guys have covered everything pretty well. And
that's it. Goodbye.
After Rocket, there was life after
well,
Beers and
there is
Wine.
one question I have for both of you. Now, when you guys were the formidable age of early teens, and you were thinking, what am I going to do the rest of my life, musically, or any other way? What was going through your minds, and how did you get into music?
Okay, I'll start. I started out listening to the radio. I think a lot of people have been talking tonight about the radio and things. The radio was such a big thing in my life when I was a kid. I discovered it when I was about 5 years old, that there was this little box that if you turned the knob, it was going to do all these magical things for you. It was going to take you across the country. It was going to take you to new worlds. It's going to take you into cultures that you had no idea what they even were as a 5-year-old kid. I moved here when I was 9 years old and fell into the radio. The radio by then was like a big part of my life. When we lived over on West Clifton, and up in our attic, my brother and I strung wire in the rafters so we could get our shortwave radio and our regular radios to pick up, especially at night, stations all the way down to Mexico. And we were just, especially me, I was just amazed at all of this different kind of music, R&B and soul stuff that, I mean, as a white kid,
Never exposed to that.
never exposed. I had no idea what that was about. And anyone who lives in this town who lived in Lakewood in the days that I lived in Lakewood knew that you weren't going to get exposed to that culture too much.
No.
I'm glad that has changed. I'm glad that has changed a lot. Lakewood is a much more diverse and I think better city for it. But anyway, so I was listening to the radio. I think somebody was mentioning about the Beatles. To me, the Beatles were where the world, when the Beatles came on Ed Sullivan's show, at first my father told us that he was not going to let us, my brother and I, see the Beatles. He didn't like the Beatles. The only reason we got to see that show was when Mother wanted to see it. I think she did that for us. But for me, when I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, that's when the world stopped being this black and white little kid world and it turned into this world of absolute technicolor. And everything opened up to me and I said, man, I want to do that, but I didn't know how. A couple years later, I went over to the Beachcliff movie theater one Saturday afternoon with my friend Dave Davis, and we watched the Jerry and the Pacemaker movie, Ferry Across the Mersey. We sat through it 3 times. And coming out of there, walking across the bridge, and oddly enough, I mean, that movie made me turn to Dave and say, I want to be in a rock and roll band. That was 1965, I was 13 years old. It took me 5-6 years to figure that out. One thing was that in my house, you were never going to have a guitar. My father told me if I was going to learn a musical instrument, it was going to be a real musical instrument. So I learned to play the clarinet. Not well.
Oh my God, we are following the same path.
But did you expect you to be Benny Goodman, or what?
Well, maybe. But I was just trying to make noises and make sounds. I wanted to make sounds. So the first thing I did when I got out of high school, besides moving out of the house and getting my own place with my friends, was I started looking to get into a rock and roll band. I really didn't know how to do it or what to do. I really didn't know anybody. I had friends that had bands, and I would be the guy that would move the equipment for them and stuff like that. But I was down at the Agora in 1971, in the spring of 71, and Jim Crook, who I knew because his girlfriend, then become wife, Sherry, and I went to high school together, so I knew him before he went into the Army. So in 71, he was just back from Vietnam. I ran into him at Velvet Underground show, where it wasn't really the Velvet Underground. And I said, Jim, what are you doing? He goes, me and my buddy Jamie, we're looking to get a band together. I said, oh, really? Well, I want to be in a band. Well, why don't you come on over with me? So I met Jamie Klimek after we hung out for a little while, over a period of time. They said, okay, you want to be in a band, you can be the bass player. I didn't know how to play the bass guitar.
That's where you learn.
So Jamie handed me a bass. He showed me how to tune it. He said, this is E, this is A, this is D, this is G. Now figure out the rest for yourself. So I did. So I took little pieces of masking tape and I stuck under each fret, under each string, what that note was until I memorized where every note was up to the 12th fret. Because then it started repeating itself. So I said, all right, fine. That's how far I have to go. And that's how I learned how to play, just listening to records and playing with the band, and slowly I got better and better, and soon I'm going to be really good.
keep working on it.
I'm still working on it.
And Charlie, what
Like,
about
I
you?
started with 1966. My friend Glenn Hatch and I, along with Paul Shutt and Jerry, a couple other people, Dave Nolan, put together a band called the 9th Street PERE. And none of us had ever played anything. We just knew that I'd seen the Beatles at Cleveland Stadium, and I wanted to play music. And so we kind of drew straws. I drew the bass player draw. I'm telling you, we are, and I was playing clarinet at the time. So we're like twins here or something. And so we put together this band, the 9th Street PERE. We got hired to our first paying job. And my first paying job in music was in 1966. It was the homecoming from Monticello Junior High School up in Cleveland Heights. We got paid $30 for the 5 of us, so we each made $6, and we were rolling in the dough. We were professional musicians. And I said, and while we played, nobody listened to us, but they made like pyramids and stuff. I mean, we were 7th and 8th graders. They didn't give a shit what we were doing. And, but I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I said, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. I don't care. I'm going to find a way to do this. And so we put the band together. And then in '68, I moved to Milwaukee, where I finally met other musicians. And we put together the Kim Zonico and the Southside Blues Band, which we thought was funny because the south side of Milwaukee is just extremely German, and they have no blues. So we were the Southside Blues Band.
So how did Kim become Charlie Wiener?
Oh, how did Kim become? Well, then I moved back to Cleveland, and Glenn and I got back together, and we put together this thing, it was like an acoustic act, and it was me and Glenn, and sometimes my friend Robin, girlfriend at the time, and then Kathy Gerson. It was like just kind of a flowing thing. We needed a name for it. We couldn't think of a name for it. And my sister came up with 2 names. One was Danny Dingleberry and the Doo-Wops.
I remember that.
So, there, but for the grace of God, go on. And the other one was called Charlie Wiener and the Fun Buns. We thought, well, that's an interesting name. We'll call it Charlie Wiener and the Fun Buns because people will come to see what that is. There was no Charlie Wiener, there was no Fun Buns, it was the name of the band. And all of a sudden, I'd be standing at the bar getting a beer or something, because I was 19 now and it was still illegal. And but nobody ever asked my age. That was the nice thing, is back then they just assumed because I played music and I was working in bars, I was old enough to be there. And I'd be sitting there and I'd hear somebody going, hey Charlie. I was like, whatever, I'm getting a beer. And all of a sudden they go, what, are you arrogant? They go, what are you talking about? They go, we've been calling you. I said, calling you what? They go, Charlie. I go, my name's not Charlie, I'm Kim. And they go, no, you're Charlie Wiener. I go, no, I'm not. And so for 50 years I've been Charlie Wiener. And the best part was with my current wife, she had lost her Social Security card. So we had to go to Social Security Administration to get new Social Security cards. And on there it says, do you have an alias? So I went up to the woman at the counter. I go, I don't really have an alias. I have a name that I kind of work under or whatever. She goes, what's your Social Security number? So I gave it to her and she goes, Charlie, right? I go, she goes, we know.
That's funny.
So I've been, I've been both people for so long. But I mean, it was just, I was always going to find a way to perform. And after Rocket broke up, I put together a country band, a strict hillbilly country band right after Rocket. And we went out and toured for a while with that. And that was fun. And then that broke up and I said, I'll just play solo. So I started playing solo. And then we did, probably my favorite band of all time was the Wiener Land Orchestra, because the Wiener Land Orchestra played every single kind of music. We did polkas, we did Orpheus and Hades, we did classical music, we did big band swing tunes, we covered the entire map, we did a lot of originals, and it was a 3-piece band. And we did all of that. We used to do a 6-minute condensed version of the Nutcracker Suite. And I remember we were playing at a biker bar over on the east side, over in Menor. And these guys came up to me because they were playing. We'd start off like Stars and Stripes Forever, just get patriotism going right there. And this guy comes up to me, big, typical biker, 8 foot tall, 6 foot beard, wide as a truck. And he goes, yeah, play something we can dance to. I go, all right, something you can dance to, I have just the song. And I know you can dance to it because people have been dancing to it for a really long time. And we did our 6-minute version of, it was, I think Alan Green was in the band at the time. We did a 6-minute version of the Nutcracker Suite. And I said, there's it. And the best part was these couple of bikers came out and started pirouetting around on the dance floor.